So we wanted to do a little video on something very specific to Partridge Chanteclers, and just basically they're not an auto-sexing breed, but when they get into their juvenile plumage, so the first set of feathers, basically they lose their down and they get their first set of body feathers. They're actually quite sexable at a pretty young age. So basically we have a few that are kind of multiple ages right now, so we thought it's a great time to take some footage on that. As I say, very specific topic, but hopefully some people find it interesting. I don't have any day-olds or young chicks, really young chicks, sorry, right now, but when Partridge Chanteclers come out, they're kind of like a little chipmunk pattern, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of rhyme or reason as to who's who as far as roosters versus hens. But this batch is already starting to show a little bit of the signs, at least these two here. Basically, when they start to get their first set of feathers, so kind of more the feathers on their back there and on the, I guess you call them the wing coverts and such, the barring is helpful. Like this little guy, if you look really closely, his barring looks kind of blotchy. A little hard to tell. See if I can zoom in here a bit. Oh, Mom's going to get in the way. So these two little chicks, in the same age, and they're a really good example of the difference between young roosters and young hens. So I'll have to look up the age, but these little guys are pretty much into their full juvenile plumage, and you can see this little guy who's going into the rabbit hutch. If you look really closely, he's barred, but the barring, particularly on his back there, is quite blotchy and not super, doesn't line up super well. Versus his sister here, if you look at her barring, she looks a lot neater. Is probably the best way to put it. It's usually finer and everything just sort of lines up better. So it's a bit subjective. It can vary quite a bit, but yeah, by the time they get to this stage, you have a pretty good idea of who's a hen and who's a rooster. So these older birds, these are almost full grown. A lot of the roosters are really starting to take on a rooster appearance, but you can still see the difference. If you look at some of the roosters, there's kind of that blotchy, like this guy on his back. You still see some of the younger or juvenile feathers there. You still got that blotchy pattern, whereas this hen, she hasn't quite got her partridge coloring yet. But if you stop moving here, if you look, you can see her bars are they're finer, and they line up a bit better. So she's still in her juvenile feathers too. But it's definitely, it's not foolproof. I mean, this hen over here is kind of almost intermediate. She's definitely a hen, but some of her barring is a little less neat looking, but it's kind of more of like a spectrum thing. If you have a group of birds, it's pretty obvious the ones that are on either end of the spectrum. Anyway, it's a neat little trick. I mean, not quite as handy with this breed as some of the actual auto-sexing breeds where you can tell as day-olds, but it's still kind of nice to know. Sometimes when you have a group of birds, you know how many hens you're likely to get versus how many roosters you've got, and you can make plans accordingly.